Welcome viewers. Today we will be looking at this factorial expression with a view to simplify it. So what we have is 14 factorial minus 13 factorial, all divided by 14 factorial plus 13 factorial. So let us quickly look at this factorial expression as a basis for some form of reminder. We have 5 factorial, and that is equals to 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. That is to say, we're starting from 5 because it's 5 factorial, and we keep going one step backwards until we get to 1 as the last digit. Starting with 5, taking a step or one figure backwards, we keep going one figure backwards until we get to 1. So that is 5 factorial. But remember that 5 factorial, as we have expressed it, 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, can also be reorganized. Now, if you look at 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, this is the same as 4 factorial. So we have a section of that factorial which is now 4 factorial. So the entire 5 factorial can be expressed as 5 times 4 factorial. 5 factorial can now be expressed as 5 times 4 factorial. Similarly, in the question of the day, we have an expression which is 14 factorial. Now, 14 factorial is the same as 14 times 13 times 12. We keep going one number less, times 11, and we keep multiplying all the way to 2 and then times 1. So we start with 14. We keep multiplying one number less until we get to 1. And that is our expression for 14 factorial. That therefore tells you and I that our 14 factorial can also be rearranged or can come in a different form of expression. Now, look at 13 times 12 times 11 all the way to 2 times 1. That expression can also be the same as 13 factorial. That tells you and I that our 14 factorial can be expressed as 14 times 13 factorial. I come again, 14 factorial is equals to 14 times 13 factorial. There is a reason why we have decided to express it like this, and you see clearly in the subsequent video. You recall our question of the day, which is 14 factorial minus 13 factorial, all divided by 14 factorial plus 13 factorial. So in the numerator, that is the value at the top, This is the numerator, and then the values below are called the denominator. Now, in the numerator, you notice we have 14 factorial minus 13 factorial. Earlier on, we came about an expression for 14 factorial. And if you could remember clearly, we said that 14 factorial is the same as 14 times 13 factorial. So what we will do is to substitute both in the numerator and also in the denominator that value for 14 factorial. So anywhere we see 14 factorial, we will now write it as 14 times 13 factorial. And this can be clearly seen. So in the numerator, instead of 14 factorial, we have replaced it with 14 times 13 factorial. And also in the denominator, instead of 14 factorial, we have clearly substituted with 14 times 13 factorial. Now let's further simplify this by clearly writing out what we have. Now this is the simplified version on the right hand side of our question of the day. Now if you look clearly at the numerator, you will see that 13 factorial is common in both sides. That is, on the right hand side of the subtraction, there is a 13 factorial, and also on the left hand side of the subtraction, there is a 13 factorial. This tells you and I that we can simply factorize that 13 factorial out of the numerator. Now let's also look at the denominator. We will also clearly see that 13 factorial is also common. It is common on the right hand side of the plus sign, and it is also found on the left hand side of the plus sign. So we can also factorize the 13 factorial from the denominator. So let's see how this plays out when we factorize it both from the numerator that is on top and also from the denominator. So when we bring out 13 factorial from the numerator, we now have 14 minus 1. And then we have the 13 factorial, which we have factorized out of the numerator. And then from the denominator, when we bring out the 13 factorial, we have 14 plus 1 left. So in the simplified version, we have 13 factorial into 14 minus 1, bracket close, all divided by 13 factorial into 14 plus 1, or bracket closed. By observation, we see that we have 13 factorial at the numerator and 13 factorial at the denominator. So they can cancel out. So if we divide both top and base by 13 factorial at the top, if we divide it 1, and 13 factorial, we divide it at the denominator, it also gives us 1. So that cancels out. Now you observe that we have 14 minus 1 at the numerator. 14 minus 1 gives us 13. And if you look at the denominator, you have 14 plus 1, and 14 plus 1 is 15. Therefore, our simplified form of this expression will be 13 divided by 15. And that clearly is the simplified form of our initial factorial expression. So our answer is 13 over 15. Thank you for watching this video. Kindly subscribe, like, and share.